We could use your help keeping the Omaha History Podcast going. Please consider becoming a patron for as little as $1 a month. Go to patreon.com/Omaha. That's Patreon. It'll help pay the light bill.
Welcome to the North Omaha History Podcast with noted author and historian Adam Fletcher Sassy. Each week, Adam takes you on a guided tour through Omaha's dynamic past.
Omaha is a city of immigrants, and among the diversity are Italians who came for jobs, homes, and connections. More than Mr. C's or an Italian sandwich shop at 30th and Ames, there is a rich heritage in the community that's almost entirely lost. So tell us about the history of Italians in North Omaha, Adam.
Steve, we get a lot of stories about Little Italy, especially right now that the neighborhood's being redeveloped and kind of re-envisioned in this new way. A lot of folks want to look back and remember the way that it was. They talk a lot about, the Santa Lucia Hall and the big parades and the old churches and the predominant families that lived up and down 10th Street and all over that region of the city right there. But what they leave out every single time is that wasn't the only Italian colony in Omaha. It seems that starting all the way back in the 1850s, Italians had been coming to the city. But a lot of folks from northern Italy wanted to get jobs at the lead smelter, at the American refinery downtown, Asarco. And they wanted to get jobs in the Union Pacific yards and in the shops down there. And they wanted to live closer to those job places. So they started moving around Cumming Street on 16th, on 13th, on 11th, and then going all the way west over to 24th. And settling around that area, this colony of Italians became North Omaha's Italian neighborhood. These folks generally came from northern Italy. They weren't the Sicilians that were in the south. And they didn't necessarily have the brokers that the area south of downtown had. Instead, they just kind of came intuitively, or they followed one specific friend or family. As they moved in, starting in the 1870s and 80s, this neighborhood immediately took on an Italian flavor, as it were. And by the turn of the 20th century, there were a lot of Italians around. There were bakeries and grocery stores. There were all kinds of businesses and homes all the way through this area in the near north side that was North Omaha's Italian neighborhood. Now, one of the things that really anchored the neighborhood, aside from the mom and pop groceries, was the Holy Family Catholic Church. Holy Family was started way back in 1876. It's the third oldest parish in Omaha, and it's the oldest church still operating in its original facility in the entire city. Pretty spectacular, Steve. But Holy Family Parish started way back in 1876, and they became an Irish parish pretty quick. The founding priest was an Irishman and brought over a lot of his countrymen. But, by the 1910s and 20s, that group of immigrants had assimilated into Omaha's fabric. It took 50 years, but they had assimilated and really blended in other parishes around the city. And so Holy Family became Italian. And from the 1920s and 30s through about 1961, 62 right in there, Holy Family Catholic Church was an Italian Catholic church. They celebrated Italian saints. They had Italian feasts. They played Italian music during the festivals. They had Italian dances. And it was a designated national parish. So a lot of the services were actually held in Italian, or prayers were said in Italian, and of course Latin and whatnot, but it was a really welcoming environment for North Omaha's Italian community. There were weddings there that were held like old Italian weddings all the way, back from the old country into the 1950s with half-mile long processions, these lavish dresses, huge meals, and hundreds of people attending every single wedding. The Italians in the neighborhood also went to the Holy Family School. That was on the first floor of the church and stayed there for more than 80 years. Since the 1960s, that parish started to transform and change. And I'll get into that a little bit in a minute. It's important to see the role of the social life, though, among Italians in North Omaha. Starting in the late 1920s, the Holy Family Parish adopted St. Alfio. St. Alfio was one of three brothers who were all beatified and made into saints because of their acts of faith and the miracles that they performed. And by worshiping St. Alfio, the parish really adopted that northern Italian kind of focus. The Italian community in North Omaha started a St. Alfio Society. It was actually a social hall that was designed to do mutual support, mutual aid for other Italian immigrants. But they also had festivals and parades and fireworks and all kinds of events to raise money to help their countrymen. So new immigrants would come over from northern Italy. They'd need a place to stay, and they didn't have money to pay for it. They'd go to the St. Alfio Society, who would rent them an apartment. They would go to the St. Alfio Society, who would stock their refrigerator. They would go to the St. Alfio Society, who would get them a job. So the St. Alfio Society really acted as a broker of sorts for these Italian immigrants in North Omaha. They also had their own festivals. So just like Little Italy has the Santa Lucia Festival, North Omaha had the Santa Alfio Festival. And they had a gigantic procession that had a statue of St. Alfio at the front of it. The statue is actually still existent today, Steve. It's in St. Francis Cabrini Church in South Omaha now. But the statue used to go at the front of these parades in North Omaha from 1930s when the statue came all the way through the 1950s into the 60s. So a really exciting thing in the form of that society. When they built their own hall, they started to host events there that featured, they had dinners, they had parties and all kinds of different things going on. The parade, they took that statue, put it at the front of the parade. It went from North 17th Street at about Nicholas and then went over to Clark Street. There was a carnival that was held. Sometimes the carnival was right in front of the church. Sometimes it was over at Creighton Hall at Creighton University because of the connection between the Italian priests at Holy Family and the Italian priests at Creighton, who were actually responsible for helping found Creighton. But all the way into the 50s, this festival was held. There was a special mass that went with it. There were cannons that were filled with confetti that were shot off. As late as 1949, there were 22 concession stands. There were 15 different shows and all kinds of rides at the festival. So the feast week for San Alfio went on for 8 days, and there was a gigantic dance at the end of every week. And it was really exciting with thousands of people coming every night. The San Alfio Arch, they made this gigantic archway that kind of migrated around. It was in North 17th and Grace by the San Alfio Hall, but it was also over at Holy Family Church. And you can still see Holy Family today. It's listed on the National Register of Historic Places. It's a very beautiful building, to say the least. Omaha's Italian-American band played at the carnivals and festivals for decades in North Omaha. They also played at the Santa Lucia Festival in South Omaha and really had a big role in the culture. And then some of the folks who helped organize the festival through the years included people like Joe Baldanza and John LaFeria, Franco Frank, Alfio Spinazia, Franco Ferraro. In the 50s, the organizing committee had last names like Alessandro, DeMarco, Spenzia, DeMarco, Mascarello, and Cassio, of course. And lots of just really notable families that are still in Omaha today. There were a lot of Italian businesses that were in North Omaha's Italian neighborhood as well. To think of that neighborhood, to think of that space, it's no surprise to know that there were 20 different grocery stores. Maybe the most popular one was Dominic Batticio's Montclair Market right at the corner of 30th and Cumming. That was a little bit outside the neighborhood, but it was still considered part of North Omaha's neighborhood. The Troya family had a store in the neighborhood at 17th and Clark and the Nicholas Street Market, bunches of other businesses that were right there. An interesting thing happened, though, in the 1950s, kind of similar to what happened with the Irish in the 1920s. The Italians in North Omaha assimilated into the rest of the city. The Holy Family Church actually ended its ethnic designation in the early 60s because the church, it had lost that kind of Italian flavor. It had lost that identity, and folks had moved away from the near north side. Instead, they were living out in West Omaha around 72nd Street and further west, and joining Catholic parishes that were out there. Holy Family kept on, but the neighborhood around the church started to transform and change. Actually, that had happened right after World War II. In the 1940s, more industry and commercial spaces moved into North Omaha's Italian neighborhood. And all kinds of houses were destroyed, and popped these warehouses and stores and different things. In 1976, Reverend McClausen from Holy Family said that discrimination against Italians had pretty much ended by the 1950s. And as those Italians became more affluent, they didn't want to stay in the inner city anymore. They didn't want to stay in the small houses and shanties and apartment buildings that were in the near north side neighborhood at that point. So they moved out. They even moved north, Steve, to speak of Italians in North Omaha. Mr. C's actually reflects that growth. And even though the Caniglias didn't live in the neighborhood, in the near north side neighborhood, they definitely became part of the Miller Park and Minnelusa neighborhoods and the Saratoga neighborhoods and all that area up there where the restaurant was at 30th and 4th. Many of the East Omaha truck farms were run by Italians who had moved there in the 1930s and 40s. They didn't have as much wealth, but they definitely knew how to farm. And so they moved down to East Omaha and started those truck farms and really contributed to the city's economy that way. The intersection of 30th and Ames actually became home to an Italian sandwich shop that stayed there for like 25 years. So that identity definitely spread throughout North Omaha and became something else. And in this way, Italians in North Omaha became part of the fabric of the entire community, similar to the Scandinavians and the Irish and the other European ethnic identities that were sprinkled throughout the city. They assimilated right in and became part of the fabric of the entire neighborhood. That's a little bit about the history of Italians in North Omaha. It's important to note, though, that San Alfio statue is still at St. Francis Cabrini, and folks should go take a look at that. Hey, take a picture, send it to me. I would love to see it and post it on NorthOmahaHistory.com, maybe on the article even. The church, of course, is still open today. Holy Family Catholic Church is still open today at 17th and Izzard. And like I said, it's listed on the National Register of Historic Places. The City of Omaha's Landmark Heritage Preservation Commission also placed it as an official Omaha landmark. So definitely something to see there. Unfortunately, though, there are really no other signs of the Italian community once located in that part of North Omaha, right there in the near north side around Cummings Street. And the sites and locations of many of the different places are lost to time. However, I have a few listed on NorthOmahaHistory.com, and I invite people to take a look and share comments and share pictures and anything you'd like me to know about the Italians in North Omaha. And that's a little history of the community.
Thanks for listening to the North Omaha History Podcast with noted author and historian Adam Fletcher Sasse. Join us next week as Adam takes you on another guided tour through Omaha's dynamic past.